Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. It's always a pleasure to be in Spain. Great people, great food. Let me quickly introduce myself. So I started off my career in industrial design. I started designing furniture, gadgets, appliances, and things like that. And then I fell in love with technology and then got into more human-computer interaction, working with software and interactive products and environments and systems and things like that. And then I started to build things like this, which was quite fun. Sensors, working on custom-made PCB boards, spending a lot of time on fun stuff like that. But what you're not seeing here is actually like me, like 20 pounds heavier, and just all these like bags under my eyes, totally looking like a mess, fun times. And then I switched to more technology, mobile apps, startups, and larger like tech companies. I used to live in New York. I used to work on Swarm and Foursquare. Are you guys familiar with those apps? Swarm is a social app where you check in and share your location with friends. Foursquare is more like discovery, local search discovery, where you can find like new places to go for restaurants, bars, etc. And then I moved to Berlin last year, to Germany, right after Microsoft acquired Wunderlist, which is a to-do list-making app. And then, at Microsoft, I've been messing with productivity tools, Cortana, artificial intelligence, and a bunch of other like computing processes. And recently, actually, surprise, surprise, I left my position and joining InVision next week. I'm super, super excited to get into the whole new world of design tools and systems. If you have any feedback for InVision or feature requests, come find me after the talk. Let's dive in. So change is the only constant in life, right? Like our lives are changing super fast. We are living in a really, really strange world where things are just speaking to us and technologies blooming everywhere. Display technologies are getting even more complicated, more sophisticated. And now screens are fading back into the background. And now there are all these new novelties like wearables, voice-activated interfaces, and bots are all coming at from all directions. So today, in the next like 45 minutes or so, I'll be talking about these three things. I will dive into these novel interactions, different models, exploring the foundations of sensing, learning, making decisions, and then talk about how to humanize these super strange, weird technologies, and then close up with a few guiding principles that also helped me as a designer to be more future-proof. So as designers and product people, how many designers do I have in the room? All right, more dev-heavy, I'm assuming. Product managers? I'm just going to call us like product people. Are we cool with that? Do you have any other suggestions? All right, product people, period. So as product people, we are craftsmen, right? We are working on our crafts, tools that evolve with us, evolve with humans, and become extensions of us. And we make software that is relatable to humans, hopefully, right? We translate these real-world interactions into digital experiences, and we remove the artificial from our crafts. And innovation doesn't happen just with equations or numbers and all these like systematic symbols and things like that. It's actually coming from a very, very human place. And similarly, as creators and inventors of the future, fueling innovation, we should start with looking at our discipline as an intersection of technology, science, cognition, psychology, and art coming all together to make beautiful things, make usable things. And we are opinionated, gutsy people that rely on our like opinions, but at the same time, we are quite scientific, relying on data, relying on user insights, and we sometimes like kill the designs and the products by the sword of data. And interface is a craft as well, right? To define it very simply, it's a way for humans to control and communicate with machines. And it all started with these command lines, right? And funny thing. We are coming back to this command line after decades. And back in the days, whoever had some computing, some machine in their house, in their companies, in their offices, they used to interact with this command line. And this was the only graphical user interface that was available. And then this graphical user interface evolved into something that developers just love to use, right? Like terminal or all these like slash-based like commands and everything. And it was faster, it was more powerful, familiar for more like developers. And now it's becoming popular again. Like we all love these slash Giphy, and then we have our like little battles for who's gonna throw in the funniest GIF. And messaging is becoming a very dominant way of communication. Everybody's now relying on these like inputs for line inputs for communication and messaging. So this boring command line interaction from decades ago that turned into uncool, and now it's becoming cool again. Similarly, like this guy. Do you guys remember this guy? It used to be like the coolest kid around, right? Like it was popping up and telling us, supporting us in whatever complex activity that we are in. It was helping us navigate through, again, like actions and complex data. And then it started to get a little annoying. Like, let's be honest. Yeah, I represent the company, but you can say your real feelings. I sometimes feel the same way too. It was annoying, it was disruptive. But again, like funny thing, everybody's trying to build the next Clippy. Minus the disruption and annoyance. But now like user experience is being redefined, and now all designers or like product people, we are striving for developing things that are easy to learn, that doesn't really come with a huge like learning curve. Like why don't we just use language as the main interface, because language is the human interface. This is how we interact with each other. So why don't we use the same model, the same principle for communicating with machines? And when this is all like happening, we sometimes feel a little like weirded out by that. But if you remember the first time when we started to get our smartphones, it was weird back then too, right? Like it was rude socially, like we were always like staring at our phones instead of talking to one another, and then it became a norm, right? Now we even jump from one device to another. Now we are all like ninjas typing, and we can have like multitasking while playing with our phones and games and doing all these things. So when the technology that we create dramatically altering our existence and altering the way we live, what can we do other than embracing it and but still questioning how we can make it better, how we can make it more human and more useful without losing the meaning and the actual intention. And now we are living in the era of smart. So passive objects in everyday life is gaining intelligence. They are gaining the ability to sense, to make decisions on your behalf and negotiate and even make jokes for you, right? So now they are all being reinvented and constantly sharing their statuses and constantly giving us information about what we should do, what we should wear, and things like that. So now, things that used to be all like quiet and innocent in your kitchen, in your living room, in your car, are now talking to you and now gaining all like intelligence and speaking back to you. So there's all these like objects going on and on and on. And now, when I look at Kickstarter, for example, I just type in smart and there are shit ton of projects. Now everybody's working on this because this is how we will define this era and the future era. And it's time to really get our hands all dirty and messy and look at what we can do with all these strange novelties. We have all these technologies, and we also have a lot of problems. I mean, we all know this orange man, ruining the world with his tiny hands. And apart from this guy, we also have climate change. We have crime, we have less resources, we are all suffering from like the scarcity of resources, and are we ready to tackle all these as product people? But don't worry, as designers, as product people, developers, we are here to solve problems, right? And now our role is also shifting from just like nudging pixels and making things like pretty. We are becoming the inventors of also social conscious of these services. So when we have also technologies helping us too, in a way that now the world is all flat. I'm here talking to you guys. We are collaborating with people that are in Israel, in India, in Seattle, and and 50 billion devices are now like connected to each other. Everybody has their like phones in their pocket, and cloud computing. All of these things are getting together and helping us tackle all these challenges and the Orange Man. So now I want to talk about these like novelties and dive into what I mean by all these like exciting things that are happening around us, and talk a little bit about like the network of these physical objects and devices and spaces, and then jump to how to humanize all these frightening new technologies. So objects like Nest is quite common now, right? Like it's a little like creepy, but yes, it also does a lot for us. Like it knows when we are home, it knows when we are away from home, our room temperature preferences, when we go to bed. Yeah, it's creepy, but it also maximizes our efficiency in our heating. And also while doing so, it gives us a better consciousness, a bigger awareness around the energy that we consume. So as product people, when we are looking at these sensor technologies, we should also look into ways of how to teach people something, how to, yes, give this comfort, give this sense of like awareness, but at the same time, how to trigger certain parts of their brain or certain parts of their like everyday life so that they become better human beings and better citizens and do the right thing for the society, and also use less energy. Another great project that messes with like sensors a lot. So a fun fact, fresh water is only right now like 2.5% of the world's total water supply. And the demand for fresh water is obviously super high, and now the water use and recycle is even becoming like more crucial. So Microsoft is collaborating with this company, Ecolab, where they use cloud-based computing and the sensor-based networking to help industries to find solutions, especially like factories, to use less water and to become more conscious of their conscious of the water scarcity. And so cloud computing, as I said, and these like smart networks are all helping us fight these big challenges, world challenges. And from smart lighting to waste management to urban infrastructure to to traffic monitoring, security, and emergency detection. These products and these technologies should improve our life quality. And now let's talk more about some exciting hardware. So this is a New York startup called Little Bits. What they do is they build open source libraries for modular electronic with a great mission, which is to democratize the hardware and software education and breaking down the complexities for children. So they are working on creating a new generation of inventors, makers, and crazy inventors of little kids bringing the math and the art and design together. So design not only making our lives easier, but also helping building communities for the future and shaping up who's about to come and save us when we are 60 years old from water scarcity or any other like resources. Or this fantastic project that is developed by Virginia Tech. So what they are doing is working on a car for blind people. It's a semi-autonomous vehicle where with using the tactile feedback, using these like little components where I will be talking more about later on, giving a better sense and autonomy for blind people to navigate through roads and basically help them navigate and go from A to B. And one of the very, very exciting piece of hardware that they are using is this AirPix, where it calculates the road's texture, and it pushes air through these pipes and creates a tactile topography of the road. So basically, imagine like Google Maps, but on a more like tactile level with air. So it's quite brilliant. One thing that we always underestimate is also designing and developing for accessibility and inclusion. So what we are doing should serve for everybody, should be universal. And it's a little also like I self-reflect on my work too. It took me several years to really get to a point where I think about designing for accessibility, thinking about keyboard interactions or voice commands or visual contrast and things like that. And it's a shame, like we should all be tinkering in this field. Another like exciting piece, VR, obviously, but now it's so affordable, so cheap that for only like $4 you can order from Amazon, and you can dive into all these like strange worlds. But I want to talk to you more about this use case where they use Google Cardboard for an operation on a 3-month-old baby, where the baby had only one lung and half of her heart. Without this technology, the doctors would have been totally like lost about how to operate. But doctors collaborated with these like creative technologists and 3D image makers. And they scanned a model very close to her heart image, and then using the virtual reality goggles, the doctors operated these simulations for over 100 times or something until they find the right procedure, because it was a very risky one. And before this, they would have probably just done it once, and God knows if they are going to succeed or not. So design and development and products should go above and beyond and not just stick to, VR is super cool for games, and but now it's really opening up new territories where healthcare is using VR to cure, even our fears. So now they are creating these simulations where they also do social cognition training for young adults with autism. They treat it for anxiety and depression, so on and on. And the biggest buzz maker, right? Artificial intelligence. So if you guys have seen the movie Her, it's quite fascinating. Again, it's scary, but it is fascinating. And now this is the golden era, the golden rush of bots and AI, and every company now is investing in it. So now they are becoming the state of the art. And it's reaching all these new heights where it's opening a great world of opportunities where we can expand our life without interacting or without spending any time with buttons, with interfaces, with trying to read text or whatever. So now it's becoming already very, very integrated into our lives. So integrated that we might even fall in love with them in the future. Who knows? But again, these are all great technologies, but it's so easy to fuck it up. Let's be real. We read all these news, or we witness our friends' processes where you see technology is great, but getting in the way of pushing something feasible that also understands, anticipates the human needs in a very clear, meaningful way. So now here are all these like weird snaps of how easy it is to fuck shit up. But in this one, you will see these goggles are still socially and culturally not acceptable. It looks weird in social spaces. This guy knows it's weird. The woman next to him probably thinks it's weird. And you know, when is it going to be acceptable? Also, you know, there's this really funky story of a Roomba almost killing its owner. So algorithms totally messing things up. Roomba attacks the woman when she was sleeping on the floor and started to pull her hair. And yeah, she couldn't even like call the ER. She was almost like dying until like her friend came into the room, and then yeah, they also like called like the neighbors and everything, and then yeah, tried to save her. And yeah, how many of you guys remember Tay, the chatbot that Microsoft built? Yeah, well, it's a story of success and failure in less than a day. But yeah, it was supposed to be this tweet bot to engage with the audiences, with the Twitter audience, and talk about, you know, worldly challenges, and you know, be very like intimate with like especially like teenagers. But yeah, like it turned into, and by the way, like it was being fed by all the audience's tweets, and all of a sudden, like, you know, 10 tweets, 15 tweets in, a couple of hours in, she turned into a total like Hitler. She became a very sexist, misogynist, racist bot, and yeah, like I said, this just took a few hours to turn things into mess. And again, like from a very like security and intimacy perspective, it's easy to again like mess with people's lives, because we are so integrated into you know, the kind of temperature they like, when they go to the bathroom, when they are, you know, like coming, how much time they spend from like work to home. So yeah, like when this is the today and sort of like upcoming future of high quality yet creepy and increasingly complex interactivity, where does this leave us? So I always get this like question from designers too, like, so we talk about interaction where the screen is getting out of the way. Now maybe interface is becoming irrelevant. So where does this leave us? So are we just becoming irrelevant as product people, or, you know, are bots going to take our job? But obviously the answer is no. We are still here, bridging the gap between humans and machines, and you know, we are trying to understand, build this deeper empathy, connection, and communication in between these two worlds. So now in this part of my talk, I would like to share a few principles that help me out to be more ready for the future. We already talked about bots, AI, and screenless interactions. And, you know, when that's the case, conversation is becoming the interface, and experience design is becoming a question of how to craft a system that listens and speaks back. So when all of this is happening, our challenge is how to boil this entire system of networks and experiences into like a digital genie that speak to you. And you see this shift in the understanding and the whole like new Silicon Valley business, where there's this high conscious of art, design, liberal sciences, social sciences coming all together and building the next generation of interactive tools. And yeah, now all these big companies are hiring poets, hiring screenwriters, storytellers to work on AI. And interestingly now, AI is driven by collaborations between ethnographic researchers and poets and engineers, and personality is becoming the new UX. And now every interaction is becoming a conversation between users and products. So yeah, let's not forget that design is a conversation, and even when the designer or the developer is not in the room, that conversation exists forever and ever. So at this point, speaking human is divine and being direct. For that, we cared a lot about this human side of the experience for Swarm a lot. We wanted Swarm to have a personality, to, I don't know, say sorry when it fucks up, or congratulate you when you achieve something good, or when you're having a bad day, adding some like humor and sarcasm into your day. And yeah, to be able to get there, we worked a lot on the copy, we worked a lot with storytellers and creative copywriters, and yeah, we wanted this experience to be, like a mix of like telling a tale, a fairy tale with humor, sarcasm, and a little bit of smart. And the same story goes for Cortana too. So Cortana is Microsoft's intelligent personal assistant that helps you organize your life and organize your like reminders. And yeah, now behind this whole intelligence, there's a group of ethnographic researchers, voice actors, playwrights, and obviously like engineers and designers and great industrial designers as well, like all types of designers, now getting together and building this cultural sensitivity and trustworthy, positive relationship, because it's so tricky to create this intelligence and then expect people to trust it right away and give away all their information. But that voice was very crucial, and it still is. And she can be funny. Next time you have you encounter Cortana, like try to ask her who her daddy is, she would say Bill Gates, or like what are you wearing, like a phone, you like it. So interaction is very dialogue driven, and she tried to be funny most of the time to sort of like break the ice of the machine. So second principle, we should design and build experiences that are personalized and contextual to meet users' unique needs, and based on their surrounding, based on their situation and context of use. So yeah, Cortana, again, analyzes a lot of semantic data, looking at the user's agenda, looking at mail and calendar and all those various services in the whole like ecosystem. And it tries to perform actions on the user's behalf. So it provides additional intelligence around the user's context, where they are, who they are with, where they are going to go next, and how their calendar look like, what meeting they have. And then, here you can see she is suggesting, she knows that the user has a flight to catch, and now she's suggesting all these information that might be helpful for her and helpful for the person, for the user, and then performing all these like actions on the user's behalf without using any touch or any like activated commands. So, and also in order to do so, it starts with the right approach, inspired by the actual like human assistants. So when you look at an actual assistant, she wouldn't just tell you like, oh yeah, and the next meeting is an hour, like be ready for that. She also gives you, he or she would also give you, all these like little surrounding information that might help you guide, navigate through your day. Like, hey, like we are expecting rain in the afternoon, grab your umbrella, don't forget that. Or, hey, like it's your wife's like birthday tonight, don't forget to buy flowers, don't be an asshole, buy a flower. So yeah, in the same sense, Cortana is looking at the user's preferences and looking at the habits, and not only giving you the information that you explicitly need, but also give you supplementary supportive information that you might find helpful. But again, let me point out like one thing. This is where we tune down and balance the creepiness by everything is still in user's control. You can turn on and off what kind of information you want to see, and if it gets annoying, you can also change the frequency of Cortana reaching out to you and reminding you things. So yes, context is super important, understanding the user's surrounding, where they are, what they are going through. But how about the content, the information that you share, information that you design, or people generate, right, on your platform? So for that, designing and being mindful of the content is also very important. And now it's also getting even like much harder to create an emotional connection between the user and the content in the digital era. So now you will see, on the left side we have Spotify, and on the right side we have a record collection. Any record fans? Anybody collecting records? And anybody on Spotify? So when I ask you how many playlists you have on Spotify, can you call it out right away? Oh wow! All right. But about, right? But when we ask the same question for the records, like you would say right away, or you would remember the moment where you get that record, like who you were with, which city, which neighborhood. So there is a very special, this like emotional connection between the hardware and yourself. And then we lose that in the digital era. Content is just content. Whatever, I have thousands of songs. Even like the bands that I don't care about, I'm like, yeah, sure, I follow. Why not? So when we are in this, spectrum of like functionality and like emotion, how can we bring balance in between those two? And going back to creating that like deeper connection with data, it was quite important for us at Foursquare and Swarm. When we look at the content people generate, it's like locations, it's photos, it's reviews where they talk about the food that they had at a restaurant and things like that. So how can we encapsulate all that content and systematically organize it and map it onto features that we can design? So for that, one of our biggest content is check-in, obviously, right, on Swarm. So after a lot of like iterations and try to create a channel where people care more about other people's location, we came up with the neighborhood division. So we start to show you people that are nearby rather than just like a long list of, and yeah, like my friends in Madrid, in Berlin, New York, like a long list of based on date, based on recency. Now we also had a view for neighborhood, thinking, you know what, maybe there's this friend right across the street from you that you haven't seen. Maybe you might be interested in just, popping your head in and check out how he or she is doing. So, bringing a better like consciousness and awareness around the content was important for us. So yeah, third principle. It goes without saying, the product services should also be relevant with meaning. So, ask yourselves, why are you building on the products that you're building? Like, what is your priority? What is your intention behind these problems? So, do you care about your click-through rates, your conversion, or do you care more about finding some authentic problem and design a meaningful solution for that? I mean, nobody wants to be the next Secret, right? Like, anybody remember that app that made like $1 million or like $2 million or something in like 2 months? Secret was basically just like a gossip app where you anonymously, log in and then talk about your CEO, trash talk about the company's business model, etc. It was more like for the tech people to, gossip and talk behind each other's back. Yes, it was fun. It was like very relaxing to talk shit about your boss, but it didn't bring any value, any meaning to our lives. And yeah, you guys don't use it, don't know it, and don't care about it. So being relevant and trying to solve something meaningful is obviously crucial. And once you do that, the numbers, revenue, brand loyalty, recognition will obviously follow. And let's be real, like evolutionary speaking, we have a lot of biological and evolutionary limits and drawbacks. Like we have a short span of attention. We can only see 140 degrees. We are blind to the rest, right? We can only send a certain amount of information to our brain. We can remember only a certain number of like elements. Like even when you look at the way we divide phone numbers, it's in chunks, right? Because we cannot remember it all. So when the evolution is against us as the product people, when the cold reality is showing that like people might not really care about you or your product that much, so we should put even more emphasis on the impact that we want to build. So when I was doing my research on people trying to solve really shitty problems or just not bring any value to our industry, I ran into this Studio Rehab, where they make fun of this kind of mentality, where they collect their work under like Internet of Useless Things. I also recommend I follow Internet of Shit on Twitter. It's amazing. It always like brightens up my day. So yeah, what they do at the Studio Rehab is they collect all these like examples of objects that use IoT or sensors, all these like technologies, but not really solve a problem at all. So like this one. So iBlind is updating itself in real time to detect the level of brightness outside. So it uses the real-time data from online resources to detect the brightness so that you can make the call for when to open or close your curtain. Like, do you think we need this? Really? Like, you have your own eyes. You can see like, hey, it's bright. Oh, it's not bright. Okay, let me open or close the curtain. I mean, it's crap. Please don't saturate the field with these kind of things. Or, this is intestinal tract 2.0. Which is a smart pill where you ingest, where it detects like any impending bowel movement, and then it starts to execute with real-time progress and reports on, guess what, on social media. So all your friends can know when you're about to go on an adventure called number 2. Or actually, like, this is I kind of like this. I might buy something like this. But anyways, let's go back to what it does. So FitSpoon is a piece of cutlery where it regulates your eating speed. So depending on the amount of, it tracks your eating habits, and then depending on the amount of food that you intake, it measures and it opens or closes these holes so that you don't overeat. And of course, like when you're overeating, it shares the information on social media and totally like embarrasses you. But so what I'm trying to say desperately, miserably here is our mission is to stay relevant and build products that solve things, real world problems out there. And while being relevant, it's also important to be relevant in a delightful, in a lovable way, so that we are not just designing for functionality, but we are also designing for that deeper connection again, right? Remember Spotify and records? So when I joined the Wunderlist team, in design reviews and like critiques, I heard this a lot, like, make it more like Disney, make it more like Pixar. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And then it started to become like more obvious to me, because when you look at the work that Pixar does is bringing the art and technology and the science and just mixing it up with pure magic and wonder and surprise, and they've been always like so great at this, and they make you fall in love with a freaking like garbage collector. Like, look at the eyes, look at the reflection, look at all the like physics that go into it, and something so mundane becomes so lively all of a sudden. And so in that sense, for Wunderlist, we were working a lot on becoming more, again, like aware of these like little big details and invested more in these like motions. So what really gives soul to a product is these little details. I know the developers in the room might start rolling their eyes and like, here we go again, a designer talking about animation. But at the end, this is where that like little layer that is always underestimated comes in and make you stand out in the App Store. Like, so Wunderlist is a to-do app. When you search for a to-do app on Apple Store, on App Store, Google Store, everywhere, there are hundreds and hundreds of them. And they all have this like tick, this check mark on their branding, and they're all doing pretty much like the same thing. But the reason why Microsoft acquired a company like this, a company of a team of like 50 people, was because of this. Because it was different, because it was unique, and it made people feel special. So, all right, let's talk about also being effortless. So like I said, we all have our limitations, right? Like we can only see this much, we can only remember this much. So people don't have any patience for anything at all right now. Downloading multiple apps or jumping from one thing to another, they want the information ready and accessible for them. So how can we get to that point where experiences are effortless? And effortless meaning also like magic. Like I really love this quote from Arthur C. Clarke, Brave New World. He talks about like any sufficiently advanced technology is undistinguishable from magic. So that's how I see also our work. And the perfect example for that is the Disney's Magic Band. Any of you guys seen it or heard about it? I haven't been to Disney World yet. I think I'm gonna do it you know, maybe when I turn like 40 or something and just like celebrate my years of not being in Disney World as a child. But yeah, anyways, like, so this is this like wristband that the visitors put on. It already knows like what machines you want to try, what you want to eat for lunch. Like how you can also like connect your wallet into it. And normally like we all hate entertainment amusement parks, right? Because of what? Waiting in lines or for waiting for like service. But you know, with this band, you just swipe it, you sit in a restaurant, and 2 minutes later, the waiter would already bring the food that you wanted. So, or like you don't have to wait in lines to pay for something. It already like with one swipe, like it collects all like the cash from the band and everything. So there's a reason why they're calling it Magic Band, because it's magic. And I love, again, like I really appreciate how Luke Roblowski puts it in a way when he talks about friction-free world. So getting in the way of a speeding freight train is usually doesn't end well. So don't be that product person that gets in the way of those two. And you know, instead of inviting people to your product or to your experience, go there, be there when they need you. A good example is Facebook and Uber integration. So now there is a broad shift in the whole like developer ecosystem where you know, we can distribute all these like little nuggets of experiences within this larger ecosystem, and all of a sudden like those two mega companies are working together. So now you are talking to your friend on Messenger and you want to meet somewhere, and then you can easily like call a cab from the message canvas right away. So, you know, this is effortless. This is already right at the spot happening. It's seamless and it doesn't disrupt the experience. So in that sense, user interface designers designed the interface, and as us, interaction and user experience designers, we avoid the interface. And I will always remember my professor back in the days telling me no interaction is the best interaction at all. I try to live this philosophy in my work as well. And now, last but not least, also I'm gonna nerd out on my history in my past as an industrial designer. But this is one of my favorites, thinking like an industrial designer to be more future-proof. So now we are living in a device apocalypse, right? I talked about it briefly. We are jumping from one device to another, and now we are crafting these experiences for multiple form factors. So now, considering how the interface and pixels will look like, it's also important how it will feel in hand ergonomically. So think about the data as a physical entity. something that we touch, something that we can manipulate. And when we talk about smart objects, we still think about interactions to be physical, right? We always drove inspiration from, swipe the screen like you do it in real life, or like imagine like this is happening like we used to see in other parts of our like everyday interactions within the real world. So it's important to think about dimension, about touch, about tactile experiences and affordances, because the user interface of the future will not even have any pixels, right? Who knows? So this is a project from MIT Media Lab called Inform, which is a dynamic shape display that can render 3D content physically, so that users can interact with digital information in real life in a very tangible way. So Inform can also interact with the physical and digital world around you, and you can move things on the surface by basically just going with holding, basically how you hold or like move things in real life. And you see that philosophy also being manifested in design languages, in design frameworks, where we are all encouraged to think about experiences as metaphors, as layers. Like this is very similar to Google's material design, for example, right? Like we see content as atomic units with possible actions like attached to them. So this also helps us a lot to think in terms of units, in terms of hierarchy. When you look at a flat design, you might not really have a good understanding of like, okay, like what is primary, what is like the secondary action, what do I want the user to do first. But when you start thinking in a more like physical way and then layer out all the information, then you have a better understanding of like, okay, like the most important strong thing should be put over here versus less important thing should be turned down a little, like in the hierarchy layer system. So it helps a lot to prioritize the content and design the hierarchy. So I would like to close on a high note. We always talk about systems, components, and constraints, but it's important to also push the limits, the boundaries of technology, and go above and beyond. So I have a huge crush on Charles Eames. He is this iconic like industrial designer from early 20th century. So in an interview, they talk about all these like problems and like all these like constraints, but at the end, the person asked him about like, so does design obey laws? Should design obey laws? But we already have our physical constraints, and that's enough. And that already like shape up the way we think. But beyond that, we should be more curious. We should be more creative. We should be more passionate about what we do. And yes, respect the constraints, but the rest is also in our heads, in our creative minds. And intuitive is great. We all go for these consistent experiences, intuitive experiences. But guess what? When Apple designed the very first mouse, it came with a 5-minute video tutorial. And imagine how intuitive it is today, right? Like everybody, even a cat knows how to interact with a mouse. So what I'm trying to say here is sometimes we need to take risks. Sometimes we need to go above and beyond and break some rules while still respecting the constraints, and build our own methodology. And yeah, the world is a big canvas and we are all beginners. So thank you so much for being here and listening to me.